Hey, this is Will, and in this lesson, I will be showing you how to distribute the certificate files. So I'm just going to start off, as usual, by making sure that I am CD'd into my working directory where I generated all my Kubernetes certificates. And I'm going to list out all the files that I have here. And what we're going to be doing in this lesson is we're going to be taking these files that we've generated locally and we're going to be copying them to the cloud servers that ultimately they're going to need to be on in order for us to set up our Kubernetes cluster. So our controller nodes and our worker nodes each need certain certificate files, and we're going to be moving the appropriate certificate files onto each of those cloud servers. So I'm going to be using the SCP command for Secure Copy Protocol. It's just a command that allows us to copy files from one machine to another. And I'm going to start off by copying files to the worker node. So we'll begin by copying the files to the first worker node. And the files that we need on that first worker node are going to be that ca.pem file. That's the public key for our certificate authority. And we're also going to need the public and private keys for our kubelet config on that particular node. So I'm going to add those files to this list as well. And if I look at my cloud service here in my browser, you can see that my first worker node is that wboid3.mylabserver.com. So I'm going to include wboid3.mylabserver.com-key.pem. And of course, you'll need to use the file name that you have, which should be the host name of your cloud server. So yours will be different from wboid3. And I'm also going to include the public key. So wboid3.mylabserver.com.pem. So those three files, ca.pem and the private and public keys that are specific to my first worker node. Now I need to specify where I'm going to copy these files, and I also need to specify the username that I'm going to use to log into that node. I need to authenticate in order to move files to it. So of course my username for my cloud servers is always user, so I'll just put user at, and then I'm going to come back here to my browser, and I'm going to get the public IP of my first worker node, which is wboid3. Now I know we've been using the private IP so far. That's because we're using the private IP when we're kind of wiring things together and setting up configurations. But when I need to actually connect to a server from my own machine, I have to use the public IP because the private IP is not exposed to the internet. I can only use the public IP when I need to connect from my own personal machine. So I'm going to copy that public IP. And I'll paste that here. And I also need to specify a destination folder. So I'll just put a colon and a tilde / for the home directory. So we're going to copy these three files to this server using this username, and we'll put them in the home directory of that user. And of course, you can find these commands in the description to the video with some placeholders. So if you copy the commands from the description, you'll need to replace those placeholder values to actually fill out this information. So I'm going to run that command, and I'll need to type yes. And of course, I need to provide my password. This is the password for my cloud server. And now that I've provided my password, I can see that all three of those files copied over correctly. So now I need to copy the files to the second worker node. So I'll do another SCP, and I'll copy ca.pem. And this time I'm going to copy wboid4.mylabserver.com/key.pem and wboid4.mylabserver.com.pem. And again, I'll do user at, and then I'll come back over here and I'll get my public IP of my cloud server, my second worker node, which is wboid4. And I'll paste that in, and then colon, tilde / for the destination folder. And I'll authenticate again. And now I've copied these 3 files to my second worker node. Now I'm ready to go ahead and start copying my files out to the Kubernetes controllers. So I'm just going to do another SCP. And I will send ca.pem, but I'm also going to send ca-key.pem to the control nodes. Then I need my Kubernetes-key.pem and my Kubernetes.pem. And last but not least, I need my service account key.pem and my service account.pem. So there's 6 files overall that I'm going to be copying out to my controller nodes. And of course, I'll specify user as my user. And I'll get that public IP of my first controller node, which is going to be server number 1. And I'll come back here, :/. And of course, I need to authenticate. And I've successfully copied all those files out to my first controller. I'm just going to repeat that command, but I'm going to change the IP address here. And I'm going to come back and get the public IP of my second controller. And I'll paste that in and move the same files out to the second controller. And there's my 6 files on both of my controller nodes. So that's all I need to do in order to distribute my certificate files. You may notice that we did not distribute all of the files that we generated, and that's because some of them are going to be used to generate kubeconfigs, so we don't actually need to move all these files out to the servers. Some of them are just going to be used locally in order to generate kubeconfigs, and then we will move those kubeconfig files out to the servers, and we'll actually be doing that in the next section.